Hey, how's it going everybody? It's Zuko and welcome to week 3 of July's Preorder Roundup. Now before we get started, I do need to reiterate that One Hobby and Wonfes are rapidly approaching. I think we're about 5 or 6 days away at this point, which is very exciting stuff. But what that means for this series of videos is that week 4 is going to get pushed back to some unknown date. I'm not exactly sure when I'm going to cover it, but Wonfes and One Hobby are taking priority. So just so you guys are aware of that. Hopefully that's fine. I promise I'll do it. But we got some nice stuff to talk about this week, and I think we should just get started. For instance, Max Factory finally put up their Yukihana Lamy figure from HoloLive, and I think a lot of people were looking forward to this one, and I don't blame them. She looks amazing. I just love Max Factory's approach when painting this figure. Everything looks so cold yet inviting at the same time, very comforting somehow. Maybe it's the coat, the winter boots, or perhaps it's her bright yellow eyes contrasting with the chilly cold blue of the rest of the color palette. But whatever the case, they really did bring her to life. I think that's the most important part. There's like a level of delicacy to her expression and her pose and the way she's wearing her clothes that I really like. I definitely dig the plaid bow tie. I just like that because I do like plaid. You could also find that on the inside of the coat. And there's also a lot of snowflakes on her coat and on her skirt down here, which is actually translucent. I like that quite a bit. And even on her leggings, which is a bit hard to see, but they are down there. And I do think that adds some value to the figure. Now, this is very expensive for some reason. She costs about 35,000 yen, and I don't really know where that price tag is coming from, despite how much I like this figure. Now, she is a 1/6 scale, which does justify it a little bit, but I don't even like that. I wish she was a 1/7 scale so that she would fit in with the other figures that are coming out from HoloLive. I just find it really strange that Max Factory is making like many HoloLive figures, yet they aren't sticking with the same scale for all of them. I guess it doesn't matter if you like Lamy the most, but personally I just don't like them flip-flopping like this. It doesn't take away from this figure, but it would be a little cheaper if she was a 1/7 scale. And maybe I would be more compelled to, impulse buy this because I do think she's lovely, but I don't really feel like spending 35,000 yen for this figure, even if they, texture the bottom of her shoes because they can. Like, they didn't need to do that. But just goes to show you that this is a highly detailed figure, and you probably are going to get your money's worth, but man, it's a little bit harder of a sell now. But they did a great job. At the end of the day, they did a phenomenal job here. Max Factory also put up the pop-up Parade Aqua Bunny version large size. So just like Mega Man, Aqua now has another bunny figure on the market. And just like that Mega Man, I think it looks a little bit better than the freeing counterpart. But I don't think everybody's going to agree with me on that. I think most people like these bunny girls because they're so big, and the Aqua figure is going to be about like a 1/8, 1/7 scale. That doesn't matter to me personally because I don't really collect many 1/4 scale figures, but I understand why this wouldn't really be that exciting for you. But I just like the uniqueness of the outfit. I think the blue fits her better. I like the fact that she's actually blushing on this figure. And I kind of like the white leggings too. I don't think they're as interesting as fishnets, but I think fishnets being on every single bunny girl figure from freeing makes them expected. So I kind of just like this variance, I suppose. I think it looks good. Very vibrant figure. Looks great next to Mega Man as well. And it's only going to cost you like 80 bucks. So I think it's good. Freeing only had one figure this week, the new Altria Pendragon Bunny Girl, which again is another figure that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. Now, this one's going to cost you 50,000 yen, just about. It's limited too, but most of these figures are so big that you might as well just get them from the global store, so that's not really a big deal to me. I think for the most part, this looks pretty great. I like her face. I like the colors on this one. I think the bunny suit, the gold trim, right? Just the design in general is really solid stuff. And I like the fact that she's holding on to some cards too. Where I find some problems with this figure though is with the shoal around her shoulders. I kind of think it looks terrible. It doesn't look soft. It doesn't look fluffy or fuzzy. Obviously it's not going to be because it's a plastic piece, but it looks lumpy, right? I don't think it looks appealing in the state that it's in right now. Honestly, this figure might look a little bit better to me if they use some kind of like material like some other figures do. But as it stands, it looks like a bunch of oatmeal, and I'm not a big fan of oatmeal. Now, the other thing about this figure that I don't really feel too strongly about is with her leggings. Now, I think the blue looks awesome, but I kind of feel like they got a little lazy with it. It's almost as if you took this figure, you threw it into Photoshop, and you hit the paint bucket tool blue, and that's it. Like, there is some sheen on her legs, but I kind of wish there was like a little bit of shading. I'm not asking for too much, but it looks a little flat to me, and I think they want to rely on the fishnets to do the heavy lifting in terms of like defining her legs, but I'm just not sure at the moment if it's enough. I am nitpicking this figure a little bit more than I should be because overall it's much better than a lot of the other bunny girls that we get, but I feel like they could have went a little bit further with the development of this one and make her really shine. But what we have is still appealing. I just wish it was cheaper to compensate for my issues I have with it. Outside of some Nendoroids though, that's it for the Good Small Company figures this week. Not a lot for sure, but let's talk about some Amiyami ones before we jump back to that page. Now, next is the Rent-A-Girlfriend Chizuru see-through lingerie figure. 22,700 yen. Now, I'm not super familiar with this company, but I do recall them making some other Chizuru scales in the past, mostly Christmas related. And I did like this figure, even though I don't own it, the one where the girl is coming out of the tablet. I thought that was a cute idea. But looking at this figure, it's kind of weird. It's kind of like a voyeur figure, where you're like looking at her through the door in various different ways, if I could just go through some more images. Now, the lingerie like can kind of be taken off. It's not a full cast off or anything, but you can take off the top layer if you're not, you know, interested in the translucent pieces. Where is the other image? I know there's an image of her from behind, so you can like turn the figure around, which makes it really feel like a voyeur figure, like you're just looking at her through the door. So I don't know if everybody's gonna find that appealing, but I do think it's a pretty good value if the quality is up to par with everybody else, because you're getting like a whole corner of the room, a basket with some clothes in it. Actually, I think that's the Christmas bikini from the other figure, which is actually kind of cool. I like that continuity. But you also get the towel and the towel rack. Not too bad, right? Not too bad in terms of value. Her face looks all right. I think it does look like her. She's clearly a little embarrassed to have somebody seeing her. But yeah, pretty interesting figure, all things considered. Moving on though, next up is the Torah Kiniko complete figure from Golden Head. This one's going to cost you 7,500 yen, which is very cheap, but it's also not that big of a figure at about 150 millimeters. So keep that in mind if you decide to pick this one up. Now, this character has like 3 figures at this point, and I would say it's one of the better ones. I don't really like the figure of her sitting down. I just thought she had a weird face in that one, but I think this one's solid. It's also just adorable as a concept. I can think of a character I would love to see wearing tiger pajamas as a figure, but I don't have that. We're not getting that. We're getting this instead, but it's still very cute. I don't really have that much to say about it because it's just a cute figure. I do like that her cat ears are poking out of the hood, just to remind you that she is a cat girl in fact, but it's simple. For 7,500 yen, seems like a good ass deal if you like this figure. Shermy from the King of Fighters is getting a new figure from Kotobukiya, only 14,000 yen, as you would expect from this company, and I think she looks great. Now this is a Bishoujo figure, but you wouldn't really know because her face is completely covered by her hair. That's just how she looks if you're not familiar with this character, and as a result, I think she looks perfect. Now this is the SNK Heroines Tag Team Frenzy design, which is pretty similar to her classic design, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't really play this game that much. I just like seeing characters from fighting games get figures, but I think her design from 15 is better, and I wish they went with that one. But, you know, whatever. This is still a great announcement. I don't want to downplay this just because I like one design more than the other. This does have an alternative faceplate if you get her through the store, the Kotobukiya store. I think she's sticking her tongue out. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. Either way, if you don't decide to go with the exclusivity route, I think you're still getting a very solid figure. I'm pretty sure their Athena figure came out well, but I think their Mai didn't. I think a lot of people had problems with that one, so I hope Shermy here doesn't share that fate. QSQ decided to re-release their Elizabeth figure from Persona 3, or Persona 4 The Ultimate, but either way, I find this interesting because there have been so many variants on this figure, and I don't think she's that hard to find. I could be wrong, but this is technically a renewal version. She's getting a new base, which they don't show, and they might have like touched up the paint a little bit, but it's still overall the same figure for about 16,000 yen. So it's not that expensive. I still think she looks good. I like this figure overall, but it's been out for a long time, so I don't really need to talk about it. But it's just like, man, there's just so many options when it comes to this figure that I don't really know if it needed a renewal version. I can only hope that they might start making some more Persona 3 figures as a result. I mean, now's the best time to do that with the remake coming out, but we'll see. I don't know how popular 3 is compared to 4 and 5, but it could definitely use some new figures because there's really not too many out there. Also, Persona 3 is my favorite, so I would just like to see some new figures in general come out. But yeah, moving on. Amiyami and Amakuni are making a new Rei Ayanami figure for about 20,000 yen, and I don't really like it. Now, the accompanying Asuka figure, which we could see here, I thought looked great. I'm pretty sure you could find that figure for like dirt cheap, or you could at some point. I haven't really kept up, so forgive me if the prices have skyrocketed at this point. But I thought that figure looked great. So for this to be the figure in the same line is very strange to me because I find it awkward and unsettling. I really don't like her face. I don't love her pose. Maybe it's supposed to be that way, but as like a figure I want on my shelf, I wouldn't. I just wouldn't want this on my shelf because it looks a little lifeless to me. I can forgive the lack of detail in a white plug suit. She could definitely use some more like creases and wrinkles in her plug suit because there's barely any to be found, but ultimately my biggest problem is her face. I just don't think this is a very pretty figure. There are way better options out there for Rei, especially that altar figure that came out not too long ago that I still need to unbox on the channel. But yeah, I would say just go for that one, even though it's like way smaller. But just because this is a 1/6 scale doesn't mean it's worth it. But again, just my opinion. You could like this, but I don't. Princess Connect Redive Kokoro Princess version 1/7 scale from Shibuya Scramble figure. This one's going to cost you just about 35,000 yen. And I'm not really offended by that price tag, even though it is very expensive, because there's just so many effect pieces on this one, and they look good. I think, sometimes companies get out of hand with their effect pieces like jacking up the price, but I really like the colors that they chose here. I think they complement her outfit, her hair, her eyes. It just really works. Everything really has come together for this one for me, personally, and it's clearly got a nice width to it. It's a very wide figure, which I think will make you feel like you're getting a pretty good deal at the end of the day. One of my complaints I had with this figure at some event she was shown off at were the wings. I just felt like they didn't have enough definition in them to stand out amongst everything else, but I think now that we're looking at the correct colors of the figure, I'm gonna take back that statement a little bit because I really like the light blue they chose to color in those wings, and it does kind of bounce off the more like light green of the other effects. I'm not exactly sure what they're supposed to be. I thought this figure was going to be more like lush, like more actual plant life instead of these like crystal clear effect pieces, which, don't get me wrong, look great. I just wasn't exactly sure what we were getting into. But ultimately, I don't really have anything I want to complain about with this one, and that's because I don't know the source material. I'm not exactly sure if something went wrong here, but as an outsider, I think this looks great. Love the shading on this one, especially on the flowers. They look very pretty. The gold trim, excellent stuff, and I love the bronze boots as a contrast. Just a really cute forest fairy figure, right? Lots of great looking effect pieces. Her expression is really sweet. Like, I don't know, I think they did a great job with this one. But I feel like a lot of these Princess Connect Redive figures do bargain bin, but Eastream's a little different, so I'm not exactly sure on that one. It might not because they're more limited, but I don't know, I don't really feel like the demand for Princess Connect is there like it used to be, but I could be wrong. Alright, next up, because I need things to talk about, we're going to cover two +18 figures very quickly. The first one being the Mina Hayakawa figure from Lovely. This one's going to cost you 21,000 yen. Now, pretty much all of the images I can't show, so instead I'm going to edit it in post, and we're just going to look at this one image right here. Even though she's wearing the suit and it's technically on, it's not really fitting her correctly, and you can see a little bit of nipple, right? So I'm gonna cover my ass here. It's a cute figure though. I think she's got a great face. Love her red eyes. She's blushing a lot. And her hips look amazing. I think that's the real selling point of this figure. Her hips look great. But that's all I could really talk about with this one, unfortunately. The other figure that I pulled up was a sexy nun. This is Sister Priscilla from Damp Liquid, which is a crazy name. I don't know why you would ever want to call yourself that, for 22,000 yen. A 1/6 scale cast-off figure for that price is really not too bad at all. But I can't find any information on this company. So either they're new, which isn't uncommon because we see a lot of new companies these days, or they just don't typically sell on Ayanami, and this is their first figure they're putting out. So yeah, just keep that in mind if you like this design. Not really for me, which is why I'm not really talking about it that much, but at least I can acknowledge it for you guys. Ichigo Kurosaki from Bleach is actually getting a new figure. This is the 1000-year Blood War version from Mega House. Very hefty price tag, but it's also a single shipment, which means either the box is huge or the figure is bigger than I'm expecting. But expect to pay a lot if you like this figure. Now, Bleach doesn't really have a lot of PVC scales for some reason. You would think it would, considering Bleach is very popular, especially at the moment with the new seasons airing, but there's not that many out there, and Mega House is the only company really doing anything outside of like third-party resin companies, but we're here to talk about this one. Now, when I look at this figure, the first thing I'm thinking about is his leaning potential. Like, this guy has a super dynamic pose. It looks awesome. I love how he's lunging forward, but he's like halfway to touching the ground with his face. So I'm a little worried about the stability of this figure. There has to be some extra acrylic stand or support rod somewhere around his back or his shoulder, hopefully not in the front of the figure, so that it's not really a big issue. What I do like about this figure, though, is how he actually looks like he's in a fight. A lot of these shonen anime figures, they do get a dynamic pose where they're like swinging their sword or something, but they don't really look like they've been in a tussle. Ichigo here clearly does. His outfit has definitely seen better days. It's very dirty, it's ripped up in a couple of areas. I think that even continues on to his face and maybe his chest. Like, you could see he's bruised up a little bit, maybe a little bloody. Kind of hard to tell with these photos, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. He's also got a really cool base too. It's like the stepping point where he's getting ready to lunge forward at somebody, and he's stepping so hard and moving so fast that everything under him is just crumbling apart. I'm not completely sold on his face. I feel like this doesn't look exactly like Kubo's art style, but again, these aren't the best photos, so I'm gonna hold my judgment on that. Very cool figure though. I just wish it was like, I don't know, 6,000 yen less. I feel like 30,000 would have been a better price to ask. Oh man, I really don't like this next figure, and it upsets me because I had this one on my wish list, but this is the Tornado of Terror. I'm surprised they translated it like that. Tatsumaki from One Punch Man is getting a figure from Belfine, and I absolutely hate it. Now, I don't think it's all bad. I think the base does look kind of cool, especially because this figure is supposed to be like her using her abilities, right? So I'm down with that part of the figure for sure. It's got a nice flow to it, but unfortunately I don't like anything else about this figure. I really don't like her face. I don't think this looks like Tatsumaki at all, and I'm really not a fan of the way they did her hair. Again, she's supposed to be activating her psychokinesis abilities here, so her hair lightens up, kind of glows a little bit, but I don't like the execution. I think this figure would have looked way better if they just went with her normal hair color. But I think that's a little subjective, so I won't hate on the figure too much for that, just not for me. The final straw for me, though, is the gigantic seam line that seems to go all the way around her body right here, like around her hips. Why did they do that? It looks like the figure literally plugs in here and you could separate it, but that looks terrible. It's like way too apparent that there's a humongous seam line on this figure, and it takes away from the visual appeal, right? So, I don't know, I think it's a bit of a letdown, and it's kind of surprising that Freeing still has the best Tatsumaki figure out at the moment, because companies just don't make figures for this character for some reason. At the very least, this isn't expensive. This is 18,500 yen. But considering I don't think it looks very good at all, this figure could be any price and I probably wouldn't pick it up. So, I don't know, very upsetting because I did want a figure of her at some point, but this is not the one for me. Wave is putting out a new Idolmaster Cinderella Girls figure for Chitose Kurosaki. This is a 1/7 scale at 26,000 yen. And with the way the industry is trending right now, I think that kind of guarantees the bargain bin, unfortunately. But that is a shame because she's very cute. I absolutely have my bias, though. It's an idol girl in a vampire type costume. so you already know I like it. It's got a really cute face though. Love this expression, and I love the fact that she's got her fangs out in another, and they even sculpted the inside of her mouth, which is kind of rare. Some companies just don't do that, and I think it's very lazy when they skip out on those details. But as for the figure itself, it's very colorful, and I think it's going to look exactly like this prototype, but maybe to a fault, because when I got my wave figure for Pine from Bomber Girl, there was a lack of shading that actually complemented the cartoony aspect of Bomber Girl, but I'm not sure if that would work here with the Idolmaster figures. I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself, and I think if it was just like a figure full of very bold colors, it would still look great, but I do want to see how this one turns out, and I'm curious about their approach with it. Alright, next up is Azure Lane's Trieste from Union Creative. This one's going to cost you 21,300 yen. I feel like it's pretty rare to get an Azure Lane figure in a school uniform, but it does happen from time to time, just not too often. This figure certainly is built like most Azure Lane figures though, with the tent going on with the top. She looks good though. I think the shading on the skirt and on the hair look great, and I love how sharp her eyes are. I really do like that feature of this character design. But I feel like 21,000 yen for a Union Creative figure from Azure Lane is a lot to ask, because you can get Azure Lane figures from Alter for that exact same price or lower. So I don't know, man. If you really like this specific character, then I get it, but if you're just trying to pick up some Azure Lane figures, I feel like you have some much better options out there. For this price at least. Man, I feel like it's been forever since I've talked about a Tony Taka figure, but this is the CCG Expo Z Ling 2020 version. It's a 1/7 scale from Furyu for about 30,000 yen, which seems about right for the company, but I don't think this is too overpriced, because it's a nice looking figure with a lot going on. The dress is lovely. I really like the colors on this one. The pinks, the like light yellows, the purples, the violets, and I think even the dress has some like stars on it, which is a nice touch. Just a great design overall. Lots of cute hair ornaments, the fan, lots of stuff to like about this one. If you like Tony Taka, could be a figure to pick up. I've never really been drawn to his character designs for some reason, but I absolutely see the appeal in this specific figure at the very least. So I think this is a pretty good one from Furyu, and I hope they deliver on it. From Arknights and Mythos, we're actually getting two figures, one for Amiya and one for Eyjafjalla. I don't think I said that right. These are both the Dreamland versions, and they're both going to cost about 22,000 yen. They're both very pretty figures, but I wonder why these Mythos scales never really appear on the Good Small Company site anymore. The distribution of this company's figures are just very different than what they used to be. They probably cost a little bit more than they actually retail for, just because of like changes in import fees or something. I'm not really sure, but either way, I do think they're worth their price tags. These are very cute and elaborate figures, especially this one. I love the little Bo Peep thing going on with the umbrella and the bonnet. Her twin tails look amazing too. Like, this is a really great sculpt. I don't want to downplay Amiya though. I think it's a little more clear on this figure that there's definitely some like pearlescent paint being applied to most of the dress, and I like the sheen of the ribbon. Like, that blue sheen looks really great in contrast with the main portion of the dress. These two figures don't really match up with my personal taste when it comes to buying anime figures, but I can't deny how pretty these two look and how well done their paint job seems to be. Also, I really like her braided bun. Just love that hairstyle. We need more of that for sure. There's just a lot going on with these two figures, and you start to notice more and more as you get up close and you start to inspect it a little better, right? There's a bunch of rings on her fingers. There's badges on like the sash ribbon. There's a bunch of text all over the figures, which is really interesting. Lots of belts, lots of ribbons all over this one. It's good stuff, and I think the price tags are really reasonable. But I think that might be the last two figures we have, so let's jump over to the Nendoroids now. So, unlike last week, we actually have some stuff to talk about in this section, and I want to start off with the one that I'm the most interested in, and that is Nirachan from Zutomayo, which is a band if you've never heard of them before, but you probably have, and if not, I recommend checking them out. Now, this is absolutely perfect because they really committed to the art style. Not only does her faceplates look great, but they also gave her the giant-ass hands and the big-ass shoes, which I find really endearing, and it's kind of selling me on pre-ordering this figure, right? Now, as far as accessories, as far as faceplates go, really not too much. 2 faceplates and 2 accessories. Uniguri-kun being one of them, and the hat being the other. So you could kind of just have like everything besides one faceplate on display with this one, and I don't have a problem with that. Like, even if her Nendoroid was just this image with nothing else, I feel like it would still be a great minifigure. And it's not super expensive. It's 6,800 yen, which is about the average these days, unfortunately, because these prices are going up, but the yen is pretty weak right now. This image is probably just like the inner tray of the box, so I don't really count that as an accessory, but yeah, I love her. I love this design so much. I think the colors are great too, and if you get it through the Good Smile sites, you will get a card. I don't really know if that's worth it. Looks cool, I guess, but you could buy this anywhere. It is a standard release, so it might not really be worth it, but I guess you can decide on that one. Next up is Boxo from Reborn as a Vending Machine, which always felt like a joke series, but it's here and it's getting merchandise. Now this one's obviously weird. It's going to cost you about 5,000 yen, which is very cheap, but it's still basically a vending machine. No limbs, no like articulation, anything like that. It does come with a little bit of stuff. You get 4 faceplates, though the wording's a little weird. So you get the neutral, the smiling, the worried one, and then one that just looks like a normal vending machine, which is actually my favorite part about this Nendoroid, because it also comes with little cans of like drinks and soup and stuff like that. You gather a couple of Nendoroids around the vending machine, you get a drink, you have a snack, stuff like that. I think that's a good idea. Now, it also comes with a bonus, which is just another display panel with slightly different drinks, though some of them I think are exactly the same, which is weird. But yeah, it says that there's stickers involved, which might mean that these are actually stickers and not just like face plates, panels, whatever you want to call them, which I don't really like. This looks cheap enough as it is. Why couldn't they just print them on the little sheets of plastic? I don't really get that. But yeah, I think this is kind of fun, mostly for the little drinks, but I think this will find its niche with people who really like Nendoroids and just want to have like this vending machine as part of their setup. Homelander, best known for his inclusion in Mortal Kombat 1, is finally up for pre-order. Still looks very silly. Cannot believe his only accessory is a milk bucket. Like, really? You couldn't give him anything else, not even laser eyes? It's funny, as well as this faceplate. Really fucking funny, but man, this is a weird sell. The Boys is great, love the show, but is the audience really looking for this kind of figure that's so bare bone too? I don't know, man. I do think, I said this last time, his outfit looks really great, but that's it. This figure really needed a little bit more to make it feel more compelling to pre-order it, but I don't really know why they kind of rushed this guy out the door and kind of phoned it in. It's a bit of a shame, because like I said, Boys is a great show. But anyway, let's move on. Another really simple one, this is Shiori Katase from My Tiny Senpai, and again, only comes with one accessory, this time being some cute dog ears. I like the fact that one's drooping down, but that's it for 6,900 yen, which is actually 100 yen more than Homelander was. And I feel like he is the better deal as a result, but I think the market is more interested in a figure like this, you know what I mean? Just cute, right? Nendoroids are supposed to be cute for the most part, and this fits the bill. Just really simple for that price tag, and I feel like they should have included a little bit more. And to wrap us up for today, we're actually getting 2 School Day Nendoroids, one for Sakai Seonji and one for Kotonoa Katsura. Now, they're both going to cost 6,900 yen, which is perfectly fine this time around because they actually do come with some stuff. 3 faceplates each, a bunch of accessories, definitely feels like the School Days complete package, right? Now, would you believe me if I've said I've never watched the show? I feel like I've seen it, considering it's always posted online, but I never actually sat down with it. Feel like I'm missing a little part of anime history by not actually sitting down with this show. But from what I can tell, the art style looks great here. They seem to be very faithful, and that's good to see, considering that Good Smile Art Shanghai are making these two. And I've never been the biggest fan of their Nendoroids. I just don't really like their output when it comes to the Nendos, but their scales are great. So it's nice to see that these two, at the very least, seem to be on point. And they also seem to be a ton of fun as well. I'm curious to see how well these two are going to sell. Like, I'm wondering how expensive they're going to be on the aftermarket, just because School Days is a bit infamous. That feels like the prime material for making expensive aftermarket figures, but only the future knows. But either way, that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. Next time you see me, we're going to be talking about one hobby and Wonfes. Most likely 2 videos, but we'll see how things pan out. Either way, appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll see you very soon. Later.